Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Alright, let me give you the lowdown on this crazy situation that went down just a couple of months back. Brace yourselves, it's going to be a wild ride. So, I'm Jake, 25M, and I work as a construction foreman, managing crews on different sites. Being in this line of work since I was a teenager, I've got loads of experience under my belt and a pretty sweet paycheck to match. My job requires me to haul trailers and navigate rugged terrain, so I drive a brand new jacked up F350 pickup. It was just another day at the office when I clocked out, feeling too drained to cook. I decided to treat myself to a good old Big Mac from Mickey D's. After grabbing my grub, I was about to pull out of the lot and head home. I was scanning the road carefully, but in my haste, I failed to notice the car directly in front of me had stopped. Before I knew it, I lightly rear-ended the guy, scraping his door with my front end. Immediately, I threw it in reverse, jumped out, and made sure the dude, let's call him Ricky, was alright. I owned up to my mistake and offered to call the cops, but Ricky was like, "Nah man, it's cool. Just give me your insurance info and we'll sort this out." Since it was a private parking lot and neither of us was hurt, we didn't have to involve the police. Important detail, folks. We exchanged details, and Ricky seemed like a chill guy, so I told him to get an estimate for the repairs and I'd pay cash to avoid hiking my insurance rates. He was down for that, and we parted ways. I felt like an idiot, but at least Ricky seemed reasonable. A month rolls by, and I hadn't heard a peep from Ricky or the body shop. To be honest, I wasn't too bothered, figuring if he didn't follow up, that was on him. Then, out of the blue, Ricky calls me up one afternoon, can't recall my name, and wants to tell the shop guys who knows me, since it seemed like we were acquainted. I reminded him of my name, and he mentioned the shop had given him a deal. Yeah, right, they say that to everyone. He sends me the repair estimate, totaling $2,403. More than I expected, but I agreed to cover it once the work was done. He seemed satisfied, so we hung up, and I went about my day. Another month flies by, and Ricky calls me at work again. He says the shop can't fit him in for another couple of weeks and might charge more if they find additional damage. I told him to keep me posted and apologize for the hassle. He took it well, or so I thought. Then he drops a bombshell. "Well, after talking to my wife, I'm good if you just write a check for $2,500 and we can call it even." That raised some red flags. Why wouldn't someone want their car properly fixed? Nonetheless, I agreed to meet up and settle the matter. Yet another month passes with no word from Ricky. By this point, I was fed up and wanted this nightmare to end. He finally hits me up at 11 p.m. one night asking to meet in town. Disrespectful, considering I had to be at work by 5 a.m., but I sucked it up. I brought $2,500 cash and a contract stating this payment would cover the damages in full, releasing me from any liability. Seemed fair since it was our agreed-upon deal, just in writing. We meet up, I hand over the cash, and Ricky signs the contract without even reading it. Didn't want a copy or anything. Major red flag, but I figured he just didn't care that much, so I sent him a photo of the contract and hit the hay. You can probably guess what happened next. Another freaking month goes by, and I'm living my best life, unbothered. Then boom! I get a notice from Ricky's lawyer saying he's suing me for not paying for the car damage. I was furious, but knew I had the text messages and that contract on my side. I try calling Ricky, but the coward blocked my number. Luckily, my girlfriend works for a kick-ass lawyer who was more than happy to help. He informed me that by having a written contract for over $500, it would hold up in court in our state. I had essentially saved my own butt. Time for some sweet revenge. I remembered Ricky had a business logo on his car, so I did some digging. Turns out, this guy actually owns the company. But get this, he had like a dozen one-star reviews on the BBB with people claiming he quoted them one price and then charged 4 times as much. Sound familiar? You bet it does. Ricky was suing me for $10,000, 4 times the original $2,403 estimate. The audacity of this sleazeball! My lawyer took note of all this shady business, and we rolled up to court, ready for war. As we're getting settled, Ricky smugly says, "You ready to give me more of Daddy's money?" I guess because I'm young and drive a nice truck, he assumed I was some rich kid. His lawyer tried pulling all sorts of BS claims I hit and ran, that Ricky barely got my plate number, and that I bullied him into taking a $2,500 deal when the damages were way higher. Obvious holes in his story. Then my lawyer whipped out the text messages and the signed contract copy. Ricky's lawyer looked like he was gonna hurl. But we weren't done yet. My guy dropped the final bombshell printouts of all those BBB complaints about Ricky's shady pricing tactics, proving he was trying to pull the same scam on me. The judge had seen enough. When he asked Ricky for any final statement, this genius says, "I don't even have the $2,500 anymore. Can I just get that and we'll be cool?" Dude basically admitted to the judge that he'd received my money and made up the whole lawsuit. I thought his lawyer was gonna strangle him right then and there. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor and ordered Ricky to pay my legal fees, damages, and lost wages for the workday I missed. But here's the real kicker. My crew was on a high-paying job that day, and as the foreman, I get paid before distributing wages to the subcontractors. That meant Ricky had to cough up nearly $5,000 to cover my $475/hour rate for the 5-hour court ordeal. I've never been so damn happy in my life. Phew, that was a doozy, but I just had to share this wild tale with y'all. Thanks for sticking with me. The next one is an entitled people story. I had just finished up a long day at work and was looking forward to relaxing at home. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a strange car parked nearby with a woman sitting inside. She didn't look familiar to me at all. I figured maybe she was lost or something, so I didn't think much of it. Boy, was I wrong. As soon as I stepped out of my car, this middle-aged blonde woman came barreling towards me. "Who are you, and what are you doing at my property?" she demanded. I was taken aback by her aggressive tone. "Excuse me, this is my house," I replied in confusion. "No, this is most certainly not your house," the woman yelled. "I'm the president of the Homeowners Association, and we own this entire block. Now state your business before I call the police." My eyes widened in disbelief. Was this woman serious right now? I had never even heard of a homeowners association in our neighborhood before. "Look, I think you've made a mistake," I said, trying to stay calm. "I've owned this house for over 5 years. Here's my key that opens the front door." I pulled out my keys and showed her the one for my house. The woman smacked my hand away, sending my keys flying. "Don't get smart with me!" she shrieked. "I know exactly who owns every property in this neighborhood, and you are not one of them." At this point, I was getting seriously freaked out. This unhinged lady clearly had some wires crossed in her head. As she continued her tirade about me being a trespasser and fraud, I discreetly pulled out my phone and dialed cop. "Cop, what's your emergency?" the operator answered. "Hi, I need help immediately," I whispered, trying not to alert the ranting woman. "There's a stranger at my house claiming she owns the place and she's getting violent." I quickly gave the operator my address before the woman snatched my phone away. "Who do you think you're calling? The police will take my side, not some rogue squatter," she growled. Within minutes, a squad car pulled up. 2 officers stepped out and approached us cautiously. "What seems to be the problem here?" one officer asked. Before I could speak, the woman pointed a bony finger at me accusingly. "Arrest this man immediately! He's trying to steal my property!" She then launched into a theatrical sob story about me showing up out of the blue and trying to break into her house. I looked desperately at the officers. "Officers, I'm the real owner here. This woman is delusional. I have documents to prove it." One officer turned to me. "Do you have any identification or paperwork to back up your claims?" "Yes, absolutely," I replied. I quickly retrieved my driver's license, house deed, and property tax documents from my car. The officer scrutinized them carefully while the increasingly agitated woman hissed by his side. After examining the documents, the officer nodded. "Everything appears legitimate. This all matches up with county records indicating you as the legal owner." The woman's face turned bright red. "That's impossible," she sputtered. "I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. I know who lives here, and it's certainly not him." The second officer raised an eyebrow at her. "Ma'am, are you able to provide any proof that you represent a homeowners association or have authority over this property?" The woman opened and closed her mouth soundlessly, realization dawning on her that she had no evidence to back up her bogus claims. "No, I must have left the paperwork at home," she stammered unconvincingly. The officers exchanged a knowing look. It was obvious she was just a delusional busybody making wild accusations. "All right, ma'am. I think it's time you were on your way," the first officer said. "This man has proven he's the legal property owner, and you have been unable to substantiate your claims. There's no homeowners association on record either." The woman stood there, slack-jawed and fuming. The officers waited patiently for her to vacate the premises. "Mark my words, you'll hear from our lawyer about this," she spat angrily as she stormed off towards her car. I had to stifle a laugh watching her waddle furiously down the street in her heels. I thanked the officers profusely for their help. "No problem at all, sir," one said with a tip of his hat. "Have a good night." I waved as they drove off, beyond relieved to have that ordeal over with. I always thought crazy Karens like that only existed in wild internet stories, but today I had experienced one in the flesh. Thankfully, staying calm and having the proper documentation allowed me to definitively shut down her bogus claims. After the day I'd had, a glass of wine and mindless TV was definitely in order. The next one is a petty revenge story. This happened early last week. Things at work had been going really well recently, and in my latest review I was given a bonus. So I decided to pay it forward while I visited my local cafe and pay for the order of the people behind me in line. There were 3 people behind me. The cashier steps aside for a moment, just as a woman walks in and jumped to the head of the queue, completely ignoring all of us. I say to her, "Excuse me, you missed the line." She looked at me as if I'd spat on her and said, "My car is running, I'm working, I have to go first." I'm very non-confrontational, so I just roll my eyes and leave it. She pays for her order and stands to the side waiting for her drink. That's when I remember that I was going to pay it forward. As I got to the cashier, I loudly said, "Hi, I'd like to pay it forward and get everyone's drinks," looked over at the lady, and emphasized my last words, "who is behind me in line." She went very red in the face, but said nothing as I stood by the register and tapped my card for each person in line. The best thing was that the cashier seemed to have known she jumped the queue because the woman's drink came out at the same time as the people who had been at the back of the line. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So, my wife is having some issues at her work with multiple people of different levels of management telling her different things to do, depending on who's the manager on duty at the moment. I said she should do what the acting manager told her to do, and when another manager came on duty complaining about what she was doing, to relay what the previous manager had told her and to let them work it out. I also said that she should document everything so that she could relate it to HR if it became necessary to do so. I then explained to her about malicious compliance and what it meant. This started me thinking about an incident at my old job at a manufacturing plant about 12 years ago. The building had 2 areas, a production packaging area and an attached shipping-receiving warehouse. The production area was air-conditioned/heated. The warehouse was heated, but only had roof exhaust fans and no AC, so it got pretty hot in the summer, but was bearable. We just moved slower. On end of Friday, we closed all the dock doors and shut off the exhaust fans and closed the overhead door that separated the warehouse from the production areas. During the week, the overhead was open but had those plastic flap strips you could drive a forklift through to keep the cool air in production. One Friday, the newish manager, who spent little actual time in that building, told us that we should keep the fans on and the separation overhead door open during the weekend to keep the temperature cooler in the warehouse. Why he cared, I really can't fathom. We tried to explain to him that with the dock doors closed, the roof fans would simply suck all of the cold air out of the production area, but he blew us off with the standard, "You will do as I instruct you to do." So, QMC. Monday comes that morning in July, and it was hot as hell in the production area. The warehouse was the same temperature as always, and the coils on the production AC units had frozen, and we had to have people to come out and service them. All the manager had to say was, "Keep that separation overhead door closed at all times." The next one is an entitled people's story. My mother-in-law is not a wealthy woman. She had a plan with her insurance where she could get a $10,000 loan at the drop of a hat for medical purposes. I'm not sure of the details beyond that, interest rate or payback plan details. My sister-in-law was in a toxic relationship where she and her boyfriend would be drunk 20 hours a day. They got into a few domestic fights. In one, she had an open wound on her lower back, a superficial 2 to 3 centimeters laceration that looked to be caused by glass or a small sharp object. Another fight resulted in him having a broken nose and a black eye. We attempted to intervene between the two, but they'd never give a full story. We'd be there during police reports to try to pull more information out, but the stories would be, "He tripped down the stairs," or "I stood up into a piece of glass." We spoke individually with them about getting temporary restraining orders, but neither pursued one until their relationship finally ended. They did finally leave each other after she cheated on him for the 2nd time. 2 months after their relationship ended, my sister-in-law went to her mom and told her she needed emergency chest surgery because of an injury sustained during her relationship with her ex. She wanted her mom to pay for it with the medical loan, and she'd pay her back over time. Her mom called me. I work in the healthcare field, so my family calls me for almost anything medical related, to ask about what type of surgery she might need. I looked up the surgeon and saw that he was a local plastic surgeon who did mostly breast augmentations and lifts. I told my mother-in-law to find out the name of the surgery, but my sister-in-law refused to name it. I told my mother-in-law not to give her the money without knowing what it was for. She gave her the $10,000. My sister-in-law got a breast augmentation. She was literally fired her first day back at work because she talked back to her boss. She hadn't informed them that she was getting a medical procedure done. When the boss asked her to hand out food trays at an event, she said to him, "I can't do that. Can't you see I just got a boob job?" She later moved out of state and got another job. She has not paid my mother-in-law a single penny. My mother-in-law took money out against the house to pay for it. It's been 6 years since the surgery. Fortunately, my mother-in-law has stopped communicating with her daughter and therefore has stopped enabling her as well. The next one is an entitled parent's story. Okay, so I don't even know where to start. This is going to be a pretty long one, but please help me out. I, 16F, lost my dad when I was 14 due to lung cancer. My father was an amazing dad and he was my best friend. He basically knew everything about me. Some context about my mother: I knew I wasn't her favorite out of my 2 other siblings, 14F, 19M, early on in life. She's always favored my brother over me and my sister because he's a guy, and favored my sister over me because she's the younger one. She made me babysit both my maternal uncle's children, now 11M, 12M, 9M, and do all the household work when I was around 12 too. My father was out of state during those times. She could very well afford more than 2 maids during that time too, but she just didn't. I broke my leg around the same time, but she didn't take me to the doc until I called my dad crying out of pain, and he sent his employee to take me to his clinic. He flew back the next day and they had a really bad fight. I have a very vivid memory of all of this, but I remember my dad telling her that I'm not a toy she can keep however she wants. Actually, her behavior wasn't as evident before as I had my dad to make it up. I hope that gives you all some idea about it. My mother has been emotionally abusing me since Dad passed away, but the physical abuse started around a week and some days ago. I had my exam the next day. It was well past 12 a.m. and I was on a conference with my friends discussing about that exam only. She does not want me having friends. There was one of my guy friend on the line too. I was in the living room when I told everyone I better head to bed. As soon as I opened the door, I saw her standing at the door frame in her nightsuit. She asked me who I was talking to. I said my friends. She said, "No, you were also talking to a guy." I replied, "Yes, it was a conference." She started beating her head with her hands and asked me why I would do this to her. It was like she was having a psychotic episode. I tried to calm her down, but she went inside the kitchen — the living room is attached to the kitchen — and brought a knife. She tried to hold my wrist and slit it as I was trying to push her away as gently as I could in that moment of panic so I wouldn't end up hurting her. I held her hand, which had the knife, with mine, and she started pinching it with her other. The pinches were so bad they left bruises. When that wasn't working, she took the knife to my chest as an attempt to reach my throat, but ended up giving me a very bad cut around my ribs. I was only wearing a very thin undershirt. She didn't stop even when it started bleeding. When I saw the blood and finally pushed her away with all of my force, she hit the wall and stared, crying while holding her knees. I tried to calm her down yet again, but she pushed me away and went upstairs. I went to clean up the blood, and when I came back, my phone wasn't there. She did give me my phone back a week later. She even banned me from going to school or my tuitions. Now, since that day, she gets frustrated so easily and hits me any chance she gets. She hit me with a belt because I didn't clean up the cupboard. My sister messed it up and I had just come back from my tuitions of 4 hours. She tried to choke me because I told her I'd do the dishes after I completed studying for my tests. So, it's pretty bad. I did tell my brother, but he instead asked my mother if she did that. He saw the bruises and a picture of the cut too. And, as you may guess, my mother hit me for telling him too. I would report her, but she's a good mother to both of my siblings, and I don't want my sister to lose both of her parents. Yes, I'm sure she doesn't abuse my sister or brother in any way. My friend who lives on the other side of the country offered to buy me tickets and I could fly to him, but honestly, that would just make it all worse. My father was a well-known investor and has a lot of property. And it is a lot. I can't inherit any of it until I'm 18, obviously. He had a college fund for me too, but I can't access it until I'm 18 either. Legally, I've turned 15 this year. Yeah, they changed my birth year for some school admission thing, so I'll be inheriting any of it 3 years later only. I have plans to study on the other side of the country, and I need her to fund me. I think she's just looking for reasons to make me stay here and torture me. How do I collect the money to go study? Where I live, teenagers don't really do part-time, especially not girls. It's all too tiring, honestly, and I can't deal with all of this anymore. Help me out with anything ATP, please. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.